A few months ago, I wanted to learn and use Kubernetes. I wanted to understand the basics of how it works, but the more I read, the more confused I got. The problem I ran into is this. I understood that Kubernetes is a platform or a tool to host and orchestrate containers. But what does that really mean? I needed an actual use case or some need to use a containerized application. I wanted the end result of a Kubernetes build to actually be useful and be something that others could use in an application as well. I was able to connect many of the dots by following along to a YouTube mini-series by James Turland, aka Jim's Garage, called Kubernetes at Home. By running it in an on-premise Proxmox environment, one great way to learn how to use Kubernetes is to use the lightweight version called K3s. But if Kubernetes is a hammer, and I spend all my time and energy building a hammer, I need to also have some wood and some nails where I can actually create something. And that's where I stumbled across an open source self-hosted cloud solution product called Nextcloud. Now, Nextcloud does many things, but its flagship feature is a locally hosted Dropbox-like or Google Drive-like site. Nextcloud can run in many environments, and I've tested it within the Windows Docker desktop environment and ran it as a container, and that was a fairly simple process. So if your goal is to just use Nextcloud in a simple deployment, well, deploying it in a Docker container would be a great method. But my goal is to understand and learn and use Kubernetes and have a useful deployment in my Kubernetes environment. Before we dive into how it works, well, let me show you the end result. I'm running a Nextcloud instance locally in Kubernetes, which is hosted in a Proxmox environment. I've also gathered a lot of information from the YouTuber Jim's Garage, and many thanks to him and what he's done. This project wouldn't have even started if it wasn't for his efforts and his YouTube series on K3s in Proxmox. I basically took his series and improved upon it to automate it further and show next steps after you have a working K3s deployment. If you're wanting to know more about what Kubernetes is and how it works, this first video in his series explains it much better than I can. But a summary is that Kubernetes is essentially a series of Docker container hosts that all talk to one another to maintain a highly available and scalable platform. But how do we make it scalable? The answer in this case is we'll have a lot of VMs. We'll have 9 virtual machines with 8 of them working together to act as one system. Now, one key difference between my series and his series is he gets Kubernetes up and running. But once it is up and running, in later videos, you're sort of on your own to get the applications fully working in your cluster. Once I started to get things to work, I documented what I did that did work, and thus the beginnings of a script were built. I then realized I wanted to build a series of scripts that would always work in any fresh Proxmox environment. That way, you could learn how it works, and most importantly, have the satisfaction that you have a fully working application without banging your head against the desk. Let's dive in.